Good morning and welcome to the segment where we're going to talk about how to embroider on our brand new FOF Creative Sensation Pro 2. Now there's a few things you want to know before you get started, and that is on your embroidery unit, if you'll turn it over, if it's never been used before, right here there'll be a little red clip that you have to remove. If you don't remove that, you're not going to get very far. So just take that out and throw it away. That's for shipping. So let's put it on and let's learn how to do that. So to put it on, we'll need to remove the accessory tray and set it to the side. So to put the embroidery unit on, just slide it on from the end, and it can be easier sometimes if you lift up here in the middle a little bit while you slide it on. All right, there's two different feet they include to use for embroidery. One of them is called the 6A foot, and one of them is called the 6D foot. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the 6D foot is the only way to go. It applies pressure to the stitch when the machine is stitching, and that'll be the default setting in your machine to use this foot. So let's learn how to put it on. The downside is it's a little harder to put on, but it's so worth it because it just performs so much better for stitching. So to put it on, the first step you do is turn the machine on. When you first turn the machine on in embroidery mode, it'll come up with a message that says remove hoop, clear embroidery arm for calibration, and calibrate embroidery unit. There's a check mark in the top right corner. Just touch that check mark and let the embroidery arm do its thing. Once the embroidery arm has made that funny noise and done its little dance, now we're ready to put on our embroidery foot. But before we do, you want to push the down button to push the presser foot down. So touch that one time, and it puts the presser foot ankle in just the right spot to put this foot on. There's a screw in the back of the ankle, and you loosen it to allow for this little pin to be inserted in that hole. And just keep loosening it until it allows it, the little pin in. And once it's in, just tighten it down. And that is how you put that foot on. So that you know you're set correctly, in the screen, just touch your screwdriver and wrench, and you'll go into what's called the settings. And that presser foot is the 6D, and so you want to make sure you have a check mark in this box. Dynamic spring foot, 6D for embroidery. Now this sewing machine has a really cool feature in embroidery where it can actually cut the stitches that are the long stitches where it jumps from area to area when it's embroidering, and that's called cut jump stitches. And that's really cool. I mean, I'd call it giggle worthy, but honestly it can cause problems if you have a bunch of jump stitches that are close together. It can, because it pulls the thread to the back after it cuts it, it can build up and cause your thread to get build up on back, and nobody likes that. So I actually turn that feature off. I prefer not to use it. So we've got that checked, and I've got cut jump stitches unchecked. I'm just going to hit my check mark and close the screen, and now I'm in the main screen for embroidery. Another question people bring up a lot is what kind of bobbin to use. When you put a bobbin in your FOF Creative Sensation Pro, it's like putting fuel in your car, and you want to use the best fuel. You don't want to use something that's got foreign debris in it or that's not going to make your car run its best, and the same with your machine. A lot of companies make bobbins that they wind, and they sell them to you on plastic already wound called pre-wounds, right? And we all love to use pre-wounds for embroidery. However, the problem is it's a lower quality thread, and it tends to change the tension settings in your machine, and not really change your machine, but just pull so much differently through the machine that your machine doesn't respond as good as it can. It can't run as good as it can. So I really prefer to use a high quality bobbin thread and wind my own bobbins, and I strongly encourage you to do the same. If you wind your own bobbins with a quality thread, you'll have a better result. So to put the bobbin in, you can't put it in upside down, just like for sewing. It'll only go in one way when you use the FOF brand bobbin. You pull the thread through the slot and around into a little cutter right here. I put the bobbin on, cover on before I cut it, and boom, now the bobbin's ready to go. So to thread our top thread, we can stand our spool pin up to make it easy to put on, and then I like to put on my spool cap with the little prongs down into the thread so that it holds it and thread can't get caught behind it. And we'll thread it just like we did before in the previous video on how to thread the machine. To select the design on our FOF Creative Sensation Pro 2, we go to the menu system, which is this little box right down here. It looks like a little box of Fig Newtons. We're going to touch that. And we have a lot of built-in embroideries, and this is the icon for the machine. And these, if we arrow down, are all the designs that are built in the regular designs. Then we have the minis, and then we have the quilting designs. So you have 3 different categories of built-in designs. If you have a USB stick plugged into your machine and you have designs on it, you can actually go to the USB stick on your machine by clicking on the folder and clicking on the little trident symbol for USB, touch and hold the USB icon, and the designs or design folders in this case will come up. Like here's a design folder for Need a Good Design, and takes a moment to draw the thumbnails for the embroideries, and there they are. So those are the designs built in. And so we'll go back to the machine designs, the ones that come with it. And I can just scroll through here and choose the design. So let's say I choose this design, I touch and hold, and the design opens up. Takes a minute to draw on the screen, and I can't see it very well because of the colors, but I can change the color by touching the thread icon, and then I can touch the thread that I want to change, and then touch my color palette so that I can choose a color that you can see better. And then we'll do that with color 2 as well. And now when it draws on the screen, you can see it. And I change the colors. One of the things this machine does, always chooses the smallest hoop by default, which is right here. Now, you may not own that hoop because there are several optional hoops for this machine. However, it's going to try to help save you stabilizer by choosing the smallest hoop you can use. However, if you don't have the hoop it brings up, or if you want to use a different hoop, just tap the hoop icon and go into your list, choose the hoop you want to use, and that shows up as this outer area, and then you can see the relationship between the size of the design and the size of your hoop together there. Okay, so let's grab a hoop that I've got right here. This comes with a machine. It's a 240 by 150. It says right down here at the bottom. And one of the most wonderful things about this hoop is its ability to hold your fabric really well. If you look, it can be very subtle and hard to see. There's a little lip that runs right along the inside edge on the sides of the hoop. And there's a little place that it marries, a little groove cut into this hoop. And what that does on that long edge where the fabric is least likely to be held well is it puts another crease and another grabbing spot on your fabric so that when you hoop your fabric, it's less likely to move in the hoop. And another thing about this hoop that's really wonderful is these big wide flanges. Now these big wide flanges, I like to take and spray a little temporary spray adhesive on here, and when I put it on my fabric is less likely to slide in the hoop again. After you hoop it up, it's less likely to move. So this is a new machine, so I won't get my temporary spray on it, but if I put that down with that spray, it would hold that fabric really well. It'd be hard for that fabric to slip in the hoop. So what I do to hoop my machine is I put my stabilizer in my hoop, and then I pre-crease it to make it easier to come back and hoop in a minute. If I go ahead and do that now, then what it'll do is it'll make it easier to get my fabric lined up without having to have my stabilizer slipping all over the place. It just helps the stabilizer kind of lock in. Okay, with this stabilizer creased on the inside here, it makes it easier for when I go to hoop my fabric that it doesn't slip around on me. It stays in there because it already has that crease. Now I'm using a tearaway because this is a woven fabric and I like to use tearaways with woven. Now when I put my inner hoop in my outer hoop, I know it's correct when the little lever is lined up on the same end as the numbers for the size of the hoop. Now it's very important when you flip this lever that it's not real tight, because if it's real hard to flip, you're not holding your fabric better. What you're doing is squishing your fabric down and creating extra fabric in here, bringing it in so that you can have puckers. So you really don't want this that hard. The hoop holds really well around the outside edges like we talked about. So you don't want to do that. So to do my embroidery, I need to slide my hoop on, and that foot has a little spring to it and will lift up. If you need to lift it yourself, you can push on that arm, or it will lift when you slide it on automatically. And then you slide this piece here into the receiving bracket, and then I just push right here until it snaps. And when you hear that click, then you know it's in good. So we've opened up the design and we're in what we call the edit mode, where we're just setting up our design and doing things to it, like changing colors or rotating it or adding things, whatever we want to do. But when we're ready to embroider, then we move on to the stitch out mode. To do that, we touch that icon right there. It takes a few moments for the machine to get into that mode. And when it does, you heard a little noise here, and what it was doing, it was checking to make sure I had the right hoop on. If I didn't have the hoop on that I had clicked here, it would have told me I have the wrong hoop on. So it will not let you embroider unless you have the right hoop on it. It's fail-proof. So our little green box is around color 1, which is what we're going to sew first. If we wanted to do a different color, we could tap the different color and skip a color. So real quickly, you can jump around. If we want to zoom into an area of the design just to watch it, we can click the plus mark and the machine zooms in. What I like to do is I like to sew a basting stitch around the design so that it's held, my fabric is, to my stabilizer grid, which helps keep the fabric from shifting. So I touch the baste button here. Now the baste button, if you tap and hold it, you'll get an option to baste all the way around the hoop as well, which in this case I don't want to. I'm just going to take the baste around the design, and you see it as a dotted line. So to get that started, I'm just going to press the go button. All right, so in embroidery stitch out mode, down here in the bottom left corner, it tells me what color I'm on, color 1, and there's 540 stitches. Right here it tells me there is one design, and we have 18,000 stitches in the design, and to finish this color will take 2 minutes. So if I press the go button, it'll sew all of color 1 in 2 minutes. Now that we are done with color 1, it pops up for color 2 to get started. But so you know how this works, if you need to get to a certain point in the design, right down here you can just hold down the plus button and skip stitches, and you can see here how it's running through the stitches. Like I'm already on stitch 241 out of 17,497 on color 2. If I want to jump to a specific stitch number, I can just tap that button there and type in, say 12,000, and it will jump to stitch 12,000 and out of the whole design, not just out of that color, and it's ready to stitch that from that point on. If If I want to get back to the beginning of a color, like color 2, I can just tap color 2 and it's at the very first stitch of color 2. So that's a really handy feature to get around. One of the reasons why you might want to get around like that is if you have a big design and you need to leave while it's embroidering, but you don't want to leave it embroidering, so you turn it off, that'll help you get back to where it was. However, there's something even easier in this machine, and that is called Restore Current State. And when I touch the screwdriver and wrench menu at the bottom, I can go right down over here and check where it says Auto Save Current State, and that check mark there tells me that it's going to automatically save where I am in the design. So let me show you how that works. So let's pretend I'm embroidering along here, which I am. Okay, so let's pretend I need to turn my design off because it's just going to take way too long. I need to take my wife out to dinner. So I'm just going to turn the machine off, and turn the machine back on, and then calibrate it. Slide your embroidery hoop back on. Go to this icon right here. Go to the bottom one, that's Restore Current State. That button will retrieve all my settings on that design. It will go back to the design, to the exact stitch point I was. If I've changed any settings in here, if I've rotated the design, if I've mirrored the design, any changes, if I've moved it, any changes will be brought back to the exact point which we left, and we can pick back up right where we left off. Now that's because I pressed the stop button. If I had just lost power because my grandson tripped over the power cord while I'm embroidering, which could happen, then I may not be to the exact stitch, but I'll be within 200 stitches at the very most from that exact point. So it's really nice because you don't lose any changes you make. The machine just keeps them on an ongoing basis. It's a really nice feature. And one of the things that may happen while you're embroidering is you may get a lot of jump stitches and you want to clip them. You can touch this little hoop icon here and touch the cut position, and it brings your hoop out to you so you can get in there with your scissors and cut your jump stitches, making it easier to get at. You don't even have to take your hoop off of your machine. Another thing that you can do is choose bobbin position, and it'll move your hoop out of the way so you can get at your bobbin to change your bobbin. That's another nice feature. You can choose to put it in the current or the center position, which puts your needle right in the middle of the hoop. And you can also put it at the current position, which gets us back to where we were before we started pushing buttons. Sometimes this machine can be really fast when it embroiders, and it's just uncomfortable to sit here and watch it embroider that fast, so you might want to slow it down. And to do so, you would use this button right here. And this button, if you touch and hold it, will give you the option of putting this little slider wherever you want for the speed. And you can actually see the clock update how long it will take to embroider out the design depending on the speed I choose. It figures it on the fly. So I can slow the design down and I see it right here in green when I've changed it from the default, which is that is default. So now I've changed it. You can see that. Another tool that we have for use in the embroidery stitch out mode is the more options button. And with it, we can do things like take the background off, or it looks like we have fabric in the background. We can go in there and change the color of the background. I could make it, if I wanted, blue, because maybe I'm embroidering this on a blue fabric, and so to make it look more like what I'm going to embroider, I can change it and do so. I'll change it back because that's kind of strong. You can go in and set it to sew all your colors in one color. So if you have a design that has many colors in it, you want it to sew it as a tone on tone, you can touch that button. It'll sew everything as one color, and it will not stop for color changes. And And by the way, on all these buttons, if you forget what they are, this little question mark down here is your built-in helps. You tap it, it begins to blink, and then you touch the button that you're working on and it tells you that. The monochrome mode cancels, color stops, and embroiders everything as one color. So this little button here can be real handy to learn what everything is. So this is the color sort button, which color merge button that merges colors that are the same color that are back to back. So if you have two colors that are exactly the same and they're back to back, this button here will allow you to sew those and not stop between them. This here is your full screen, so you won't see everything else on your screen. You'll just see your embroidery design. If you need to see it good and close up, just touch it. Now tap the screen again, it'll go away. And one thing our machine does, it can be hard to tell on some designs, maybe this one, maybe one of them, is the machine will actually draw the designs in 3 dimensions. It looks like it's actually embroidered out if you touch that button. It takes a little longer for the screen to draw, but you can see it looks more like a stitch than just a color. But it does take longer for it to produce it on the screen. Looks more 3 dimensions, and that's why they call it 3D. This is all under the more options button, and this last one down here is restore current state, but we're already in stitch out mode, so it's grayed out, we can't use it. So last but not least is precise positioning, and we'll show you that on another day, but that is a wonderful feature that we'll teach you about. And of course you have all your zoom buttons here where you can zoom however you like while you're stitching out. You can zoom to a certain area and take a look at it. You can zoom to fill all your designs on the screen. So your design will fill the hoop area, or you can zoom to have your hoop fill the screen, which may be zoomed out a little more. So these are your tools you use in the stitch out mode. To get out of the stitch out mode and be done, we touch this button right here, and it tells us returning to embroidery edit will reset any adjustments made. Touch OK to return to embroidery edit. So you hit the check mark, and now it's out of the stitch out mode and in the edit mode. To put our embroidery unit away, we slide our hoop off and touch this button right here, the sewing button, and that will park my embroidery unit. And now my embroidery unit can come off. You can take your embroidery unit on and off when the machine is on the Creative Sensation Pro 2. It's just really friendly. You don't have to worry about hurting the machine for taking it on and off. So once that's over, I can now turn my machine off and go do what I want to do and come back and embroider again later. And I'll use restore current state. Thank you so much for joining me on this little how to embroider on my 5 Creative Sensation 2. We'll have more fun little videos that explore features, and hopefully we'll learn more about the machine. Thanks. Bye.